Hello out there, and today I'm going to be doing a comparison review between two really excellent knives. What we have here up top is the Kershaw Bareknuckle number 7777, and then down below we have the Case and Southern Grind collaboration, the CG01. And both of these knives were on my top 10 list for 2018. The Case knife actually came in first. It was my favorite knife of the year. And despite anything that might be said in this video, I 100% stand by that. It is my favorite knife. Between the two of them, I do prefer the Case. But there are so many similarities between these two when it comes to, you can see the size right there, the construction, the build, the materials, the action. So many things about this are just the same, and functionally, as far as what the philosophy of use is going to be, it's the same. But there is one big glaring difference, a really glaring difference, that when I first picked up the Bareknuckle, it made me think, this is going to be an interesting talk one day. Because that spec that is so vastly different between the two is the price. The Bareknuckle comes in at like $69.99, down as low as $65 I've seen some places. And the Case, I think this one went up at the first of the year because I don't remember it being this expensive, but I see it only at $199 right now. So $199, $70 for two knives that are very, very similar, with the exception of, say, steel and a couple other minor details. So a couple months ago, I did a video about the expendables list, the knives that you might have in your collection that make other knives that are similar to them unnecessary. And unless you're a collector like me, let's say, and I completely understand if you are, most people don't need to have both of these knives. They share the same kind of ideals. They're for the same purpose. They're both really classy looking pieces, both aluminum, both very functional as EDCs. Again, we have the same size. So the devil is going to be in the little details, and if there is anything about one or the other that you prefer to the extent that the price tag is going to be, that difference is going to be worth it. So yeah, I'm really interested to hear your feedback about this talk and this debate and who would really go in what direction. But let's just start. Let's talk about all the things bit by bit, and we'll go through it. And we're going to start with the blades, obviously. If you take a look at both of the knives, you can see we have almost an identical cutting edge, right around 3.5 inches for both of them. Slightly longer, I'd say, for the Bareknuckle, but it's negligible. Not really a big deal. Both of these, I believe, are flat ground. And as far as the blade shapes go, the shape that I personally prefer, and you guys most likely know this, I talk about this shape often, is I really like the shape of the Bareknuckle. This slope downward and then a little bit of belly and whatever this like bird's beak kind of point. And I saw it on a rake last year. I see it on a lot of knives, and the whole Natrix series, it just does have a blade shape that I'm a really big fan of. When it comes to the Case, though, it's a different blade shape, but maybe a little bit more belly, but it's still very utilitarian, and it's very attractive. So I have zero complaints about this blade shape also, but it just happens to not be the perfect blade shape for me. But yeah, it's still very, very good. It has a lovely stonewash here. Getting a little bit of glare, but really no big deal. Lovely stonewash here. I like the logo. And then when we get to the jimping on the knives, that's one place where I think the Case is going to start to sort of stand out. And let's see if we can get this up close. I might just inset a picture also. But there's a lot more jimping on the Case, and it actually ties in with the ergonomics of the knife, which we'll get to in just a second. So taking a look at the Bareknuckle, the jimping is functional, it's good. There's enough of it for the shape of the blade because after, the jimping ends, the blade slopes down, so onto the swedge. But just a whole lot more of it much further down on the Southern Grind and Case collaboration. And getting into the ergos, that's actually... Hold on. Time out, guys. I know what you're thinking. Was I really about to skip to the ergonomic section of this debate before I talked about the differences in steel? Was I going to skip over all that? Yeah, it seems like I was. I got a little bit ahead of myself. Okay, so let's talk about the difference in steel right now. This Sandvik 14C28N on the Kershaw Bareknuckle versus the S35VN that we have on the Case and Southern Grind CG01. So both of these steels are steels that I'm very familiar with, and I'm a big fan of both of them in their own right. Talking first about the Sandvik, it is more of a mid-grade steel. It isn't something that is going to really like knock your socks off with performance, but it is good. It is functional. It does hold an edge a lot better than a lot of the 8CRs of the world and the OS 8s. And honestly, guys, I really like what Kershaw does with 14C28N. I mean, it's a steel that we're familiar with from so many classic models like the Kershaw Leak, the Blur, this Echelon right here. And yeah, you do have to maintain it, and you are going to have to sharpen it a lot more often than, say, this S35. But it's easy to sharpen, and it's easy to maintain. And I like the compromise, I guess, in performance that you give up in order to get a decent price on it. It's a good mid-grade steel. I prefer it over VG10. I've preferred it over like CTS BD1. I'm very comfortable with this steel, so I like when I see it on a knife. When it comes to S35VN, this is a steel that I didn't always love, and I've come around to it a lot more recently. You know, I've started to really understand how good it can be and some of the really good qualities of it, and how basically you get some improved edge retention versus the mid-grade steels like this one, but you also don't have an extremely hard and chippy kind of edge. It is still relatively easy to maintain versus, say, an S30V or a D2. Definitely, when you're comparing one steel versus the other, the preferred steel, the better steel, is S35VN. We will talk more about this a little bit later on in the video when it comes down to value, because steel type is going to impact the cost of a knife, maybe more so than any other material. And so it's a debate that we'll revisit, and we'll talk about the value aspect of it a little bit later on. But for now, obviously, we do have these two steels. I do like them both, but certainly this Case and Southern Grind model is going to get the edge, because the S35VN is just better than Sandvik 14C28N. No way around it. And getting into the ergos, that's actually one of the big, huge wins of the Case, is that you have this extended jimping, and it allows you with the lines of the knife. Let me push the Bareknuckle out of the way for a second. It allows you with the lines of the knife to get this like extra purchase just naturally. You know, so the knife is comfortable in hand if you're going to use it like this and just be in maybe a more typical position. But as you are like cutting for any extended amount of time, at least me, like I tend to want to choke up and you know, get more of a purchase. And just the way that the shape and the lines of the knife are, you know, designed, it just allows for you to get above what you're cutting a little bit easier, and you're right above the belly for, you know, more detailed cuts and extended use. So it's extremely comfortable. Whereas with the Bareknuckle, I mean, the comfortable hand position, and it's ergonomically very good, but the comfortable hand position is right here, and choking up, I mean, that is not it's not a bad feeling, but it is not a natural feeling by any stretch. I mean, you can use it and it'll work and it'll be just fine, but this knife seems to be made for you to be able to do that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a negative thing about the Bareknuckle, but it's just a very positive thing about the Case and Southern Grind. Now, moving on back, we both have aluminum scales. Aluminum scales on both knives. The Bareknuckle has a powder coating that to me is more reminiscent of a 940 and 943. A little less traction on the Southern Grind, so maybe a little bit more slick. You also have nice contouring on both of the frames, but there's more of a flow with the Southern Grind, and the Bareknuckle, it's more just like distinct. And I think as far as ergos go, that actually is a little bit more beneficial. Just having, you know, more ridges and more points of actual contact. So is that necessary? No, not really. I mean, does it affect how it's going to actually carry and hold in hand? No, not necessarily, but it is sort of good for like placement. You know, there's a lot to be said about being able to hold a knife when you're not really looking at it and get an idea of where you are on it. And you can do that really well with this because of all that that milling and the different texturing that you have there. All right, so moving to the other side, more similarities. Basically, since these are aluminum, we do have stainless steel inserts. They are both different, though. They're very different. You have the sub-frame lock on the Bareknuckle. Very secure. And then you have basically just a stainless steel insert and over travel stop on the aluminum of the Southern Grind. Now, which one of those do I prefer? I don't know. I mean, I've seen some of the Natrix series that has some issues with the sub-frame lock, but not really the USA made one like the Bareknuckle, and I haven't really seen very many issues with the Kershaw Knockout, which is also a sub-frame lock. So I don't really think I have any preference whatsoever when it comes to one of these locking up versus another. I do know that if this were to wear out, I mean, it's just one very small, simple piece to be replaced. But that's probably the same with the Bareknuckle. So yeah, they're both very good locking systems, very secure. So that is a definite draw. Now, as we move all the way to the back, we have back spacers on both of them. Just showing that that's not really a point of contention, I don't think. There's a little bit more openness because of just the design of this backspacer. Visually, I actually do really like the Southern Grind one. And one of the things, and I've talked about this, and I think I talked about it in the review, and both of these knives actually do this really well. Let's talk about it. So I really like consistency with my hardware. I don't like often, and yeah, here's a little bit of a pet peeve, is I don't like when you have silver and black hardware. You see on this Benchmade 943, you have the silver liners, and then you have the silver axis bar, but then everything else is black. I wish it was all just black, you know? But the thing that both of these knives do well is that you have black and silver. And again, this is really nitpicky and maybe a little bit OCD on my part. But you have black and silver, but it is sort of like pairing properly. You know? You have black on the backspacer, and so you have enough of it that it sort of like creates a theme and it contrasts nicely in spots. You know, you have the contrast of the silver with the black here. You have it here. You have it here. That works. Same thing with the Bareknuckle. You have the silver with the clip and then the lock, and then everything else is black. So actually, even though it's not what I would expect or design myself, those little details actually work really well for me. So anyway, let's move on and talk about the clips. So the clips with both of these are sort of an opportunity. The clip issue, if you'd even call it that, with the Bareknuckle is that the clip sort of curves up and it can be a little bit pokey. It carries really well though, and that little slope allows you to get it, you know, over the pocket and slide it, you know, right in just fine. So that's a good thing, but it does sort of poke a little bit if you're reaching down, and yeah, I might have to take sandpaper to that. I did take sandpaper to it on my copper Natrix. The clip on this one is actually one of the biggest negatives about the knife. It's just very, very tight. It's very snug. It's hard to get in and out of the pocket. It could probably be bent and loosened and give you a little bit more clearance, but I'm not going to mess with it. The one thing that I do really like about it, though, is just from design's sake. I mean, there isn't a lot that says Southern Grind on this knife, apart from, you can see right here underneath the backspacer and just on the box, but the fact that it's a distinctly Southern Grind clip, but it has the case XX on it, I mean, that really, for me, it signifies the collaboration, which is a cool thing. All right. So action and detent. The detent on these two knives is actually pretty similar. I will say that they're both, dialed in nicely. They're both hard to open and not get them to fly all the way. It is a little bit harder, just a little bit harder to actuate the bare knuckle. It is pretty smooth, but it does get does take a little bit more force to get going, and just a little bit smoother with the case and Southern Grinds. This knife is definitely smoother closing. Both of them have been knife pivot lubed up. And yeah, I mean, they're both very good. Action is very good on both of them, but for me, just a little bit better with the case and Southern Grind. So hopefully, I'm trying to think of what else to talk about here. Oh, we might as well, while we've got them. We've got the scale right here, so let's just talk about weight as we transition into just the overall. And hopefully, guys, 4.02 ounces on the Southern Grind and case collaboration, and 3.57. So almost a half ounce lighter with the Kershaw Bareknuckle. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's just a little bit thinner when it comes to the aluminum, and a little bit shorter overall in length. I mean, very slightly, though, in overall length. But overall, again, this isn't so much a competition as hopefully this video showcases both of these knives and presents the merits of each one. They're both very, very excellent. The debate, though, really is the price, right? I mean, that's what everyone is waiting for. That's what the big talking point is. And, I mean, I'm not insane, guys. I know that even though we're dealing with Sandvik 14 C28N and S35VN, and there is a distinct difference between those two steels, and S35VN is definitely better than the Sandvik here. There's no way that this knife is $120 better than this knife. It just isn't. $130 actually, if that's, $130 better. I mean, it is not. Is this knife worth the $199 price point? To some degree, yes, I think it is, because I think that it's that good of a knife. But I think more than saying that this is overpriced, I think that this is just a huge deal. And again, it makes this knife expendable for someone who wants to pick this up and use it. I mean, if you're going to buy this knife, there's no reason to get this one, and vice versa. Even though this Bareknuckle is a lot cheaper, if you already have the case and Southern Grind, I don't really think you need it. Staying with the price, though, and also comparing materials, I'll tell you 100%, when they make an S35VN version of the Bareknuckle, and they will, there is no way that knife is going to come anywhere near the $199 price tag. So again, when we're thinking about that, and we're really doing the comparison and keeping the price at the front of our minds, I mean, maybe $100 for S35VN, maybe 110, who knows? And even if they decided to trick it out and made it like carbon fiber with S35VN, that wouldn't approach $199. So the value is really in the eye of the beholder here. And again, I love this knife, and I think that there's value because I know the quality that I have in my hand. But no, I'm not insane to the point where I'm going to say, yes, buy this knife over this. I think that economically and functionally, and from philosophies of use, like we said, that, I mean, this is definitely the smarter buy. But if you're someone who looks at this and you're like, I just want this knife, you're not going to buy this and be disappointed, So, again, just trying to showcase both knives and talk about their merits. Certainly, there's going to be a lot of people who will go in the direction of this knife, preferring it over this, mostly for that price factor, but also design. I mean, there's just a whole lot of good to say about the Bareknuckle, and people's preferences are going to really take them one way or the other. So anyway, guys, that's really it. Really, really interested, though, to hear what your take on it is. What do you prefer? Do you prefer the Bareknuckle over the Case and Southern Grind SG01? Is it because of the price, or is there something else about these two knives that makes a bigger difference? Or, if you're on the other side and you like the look of this one, I mean, is this something that You know, is it tangible? Is there really a measurable way to justify the difference in price, or do you just not care and you like it because you like it? Let me know your thoughts. I really appreciate it. Thank you for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Have a good one.